So hello and good morning. In the last class we were talking about India-Central Asia relations, and we made note of, or we realized that in Central Asia is part of Eurasia. It is geostrategically significant because it is surrounded by certain important countries and it links important regions. And then we said that India's engagements with Central Asia relies on certain important areas. One is simple civilizational or cultural connect that we have with this country, with this region. And then the other is the potential of this region, either as a market or for its energy sources or for its location when it comes to connectivity. This is simply what we had tried to understand. And then we went and looked at India's engagements with Central Asia. So we see that these engagements existed in the times of USSR because India and USSR had close ties. So India had a privileged access to Central Asia, which was not the case with many countries. Then we said that in 1991, Central Asian countries became independent countries. So when they became independent, it was a new experience for them, given that for nearly a century, they had been a part of USSR. So they lacked the capacity to build a state. So in that context, India's privileged access connects and India's own capability in terms of state building, it was suggested that it may be useful. So India made an outreach to Central Asian countries after 1991, and sometimes you will find that to be referred as India's look north approach. But that is not what we use more recently. So then we said that India's engagements with Central Asia have evolved over the years, given its significance. So for example, it has evolved through the Connect Central Asia approach that we adopted in 2012. Then it has evolved through the increasing number of bilateral visits, for example, 2015 visit of the Prime Minister. And then it has evolved through certain dialogues that we have initiated. For example, India Central Asia Dialogue of 2019, India Central Asia Business Council, which was established in 2020. And then we said that in 2022, we have started an India Central Asia Summit. So all these things are nothing but simply to give you an idea how India engages with any region that it considers to be important. Then we said that obviously there are certain limitations to India's outreach, and these are certain fundamental factors. For example, India does not have geographic connect with Central Asia. India lacks direct geographical connect with Central Asia. And that becomes even more difficult in the context of denial of land transit by Pakistan. And then we said that if we are making an effort in this region, we must be cognizant that our lack of geographical reach means that there may be other actors which are influential. So there is a competitive element there. Other actors which are influential in Central Asia traditionally are Russia, and now more and more China. So thereby our efforts, as we saw in the form of how it has evolved, focuses on a few things. One of the most important things that India wants is a connect with Central Asia. So that's why India is keen on participating in on any initiative which promote physical and digital connectivity with Central Asia. Then we said that India's approach also is to improve bilateral ties with many of these countries. All right, meaning one-to-one if possible. So we said apart from Turkmenistan, India has defined each of these relations as a strategic tie. All right. And then we said that India's attempt also is to participate in initiatives which involve Central Asian countries. So one of the most important part or example of that is India's membership of the SCO, all right, or Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So this is what India is doing in Central Asia. And if anyone were to ask you any questions in this regard, you would be able to answer it through these points. So today we take this forward, India's engagements with Central Asia, and look at some of the examples how India does that. So if we see, one of the areas that we generally focus on or look at initially, because we know about the dialogues, is the economic engagements. So you would recall that from the previous lecture, Central Asia being a landlocked region is less accessible and it has a population of 70 million. So it may be a prospective market for India, right? So that's its attractiveness. And if we look at the actual numbers, we find that India's trade is around 2.5 billion with these countries. So that's not a very impressive number. The potential is there to access the market and to strengthen economic engagements. We realize that this potential is not reflected in the numbers as of now, 2.5 billion. So the trade of India, for example, let's say a Kyrgyzstan is 75 million US dollars. That's not a very high number. All right, and that is the case with most of the Central Asian countries. The highest trade that India has with any country in Central Asia is Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is our largest trading partner in this region and largest country also in this region, Kazakhstan. So that trade alone is 2 billion US dollars, meaning apart from Kazakhstan, India's trade with other countries of Central Asia is merely a cumulative of 5 million US dollars. So this shows you that economic linkages in terms of trade are not very strong, and this gives you an idea that a constant effort has to be work in this area. Then we see, if we look at investments in this region, so India's investments in this region are also around 1 billion US dollars only. So that is also not a very large number if we see this particular region. So we try and make a reach to Central Asian countries by development assistance that we provide to them, development assistance. So thereby you would see that we have provided line of credits to many of these countries, and this line of credit is also not very large. For example, we have provided to Tajikistan around 50 million US dollars of line of credit. And some of the programs that you would heard in this context of Central Asia, not only Central Asia but also developed and least developed countries, are programs like ITEC, India Technical and Economic Cooperation. So what is ITEC? ITEC is a program of development assistance of India that has been in existence since 1964, right? So that is one program, general program, that also is used as an instrument of support to the Central Asian countries. So if you look at ITEC, it has existed since 1964, and it's a program of development assistance that India provides to the least developed and developing economies. And it then involves support in terms of capacity building. It may mean a lot of things. For example, it means training support that we provide, training support to both civilian and prospectively military officials of these countries. Then we provide training in terms of expert visits or deputation of experts. So for example, if some countries would like to learn, let's say, from India's agriculture or India's IT sector, so we may help in terms of deputing experts to these countries, or we may help in facilitating expert visits. And ITEC also involves help such as gift of equipments, meaning help in terms of not only finance but also if there are some hardware which are required, we provide them. For example, agricultural instruments or solar panels. So that is something that also comes under ITEC help. And then the other kind of help that we provide is provide is disaster relief. So meaning this is this, let me be very clear that this is not a program simply limited to Central Asia, but it is a program which is used in the context of Central Asia also. It's an instrument of India's development assistance. It's a program, ITEC, which is India Technical and Economic Cooperation. It's a very long-standing old program applicable to developing and least developed economies. So we have provided help through this program to countries of Asia, to countries of the Pacific Islands, to countries of South America, Latin America, and Caribbean, and Africa as well. So with Central Asia also, this is an applicable program. So this is how it looks like. Now what we aim to do is, for example, when we said that we would have Connect Central Asia. So Connect Central Asia has many elements. One of them is promoting joint ventures, or in other words, commercial investments. So that is one area where India thinks that it can partner with Central Asian countries, creating joint ventures through business to business ties. For example, in one area, India has some presence in in Central Asia. Pharmaceuticals is one area, for example, where we have the expertise and we can set up the facilities in Central Asia. So that is what we want in Connect Central Asia policy. But this tells you that economic engagements, be it trade or investments of India in Central Asia, are low. So that's why you can also correlate it with one point that we have already understood, that when India goes to Central Asia, it faces competition. And this competition, when we look at in the context of, let's say, China, means that we are a small player in Central Asia, and that is need to be remedied, right? For example, China's trade with Central Asian countries is more than 50 billion US dollars. All right, China is much larger in terms of its economic presence in this region. Secondly, if you look at China's development assistance, so one focus is BRI programs, another focus is development assistance to these countries. So that is also more than 10 billion US dollars. All right, and India's investments is 1 billion US dollars. So that this simply gives you an idea of our size in this particular region. And then if we look at areas such as connectivity, so we find that there we are weak in terms of the basic factor that we don't have a geographic connect. But we have made an effort to be part of certain initiatives. For example, the Ashgabat Agreement. So the Ashgabat Agreement came into existence in 2013 as a trade transit agreement between countries of Central Asia and West Asian countries. Meaning, these countries have been making an effort to create a connectivity route linking them with the Indian Ocean. So, countries like Oman, Qatar, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan are part of this initiative. And then India joined this initiative in 2018. Right? So when India is doing this, the idea is simple, that these kinds of initiatives are the future of connectivity. This increases India's options. If by their own efforts, Central Asian countries are able to create transit routes connecting them with Indian Ocean, it becomes easier for us because we have an Indian Ocean coast. So that's why India participated in the Ashgabat Agreement with the hope that its diplomatic presence or diplomatic interests would be served, its trade interests would be served, its energy interests would be served in this region, and then we can also say that it would help India in improving strategic connect with these countries, right? So that is basically what UPSC had asked in 2018 as a question. India had joined the Ashgabat Agreement. UPSC had asked, what are the benefits that India can gain from the membership of the Ashgabat Agreement? All right. So these are generally the benefits that we are looking at. When we participate in initiatives like Ashgabat Agreement, it enhances our interaction with the countries of this region. So that's why it aids in, first of all, promoting diplomatic outreach, because we are participating in a common project. It also is beneficial in terms of India's commercial interest, trade interest, meaning borrowing the numbers from previously, it may help us in increasing our trade, because now we would have a direct connect with Central Asia. And then energy interest. Central Asian countries are energy rich. India has agreements with countries like Kazakhstan in the energy sector. However, what we lack is how do we bring that energy to India, right? So then these kinds of connectivity initiatives also enhance India's reach in the energy sector. And the strategic connect, meaning these kinds of projects are of long-term significance. So strategic connect would mean that India is part of initiatives which are an alternative to the BRI. They provide an alternative to the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, right? So that's something that the UPSC simply wants you to know through simple points. These kinds of questions don't have anything very complex into it. And in any case, UPSC asked a question in 2018 when India had joined the Ashgabat Agreement. So it would not be asking you a question about the assessment of it. It would only be asking you a question on the potential of it. All right, and the potential is very simple, as we saw. Similarly, what we see is that India is working for expansion of the uses of Chabahar port. So India is interested in Central Asian countries using the Chabahar port. For example, India and Uzbekistan have started negotiating the modalities of use of the Chabahar port. So Chabahar port, when it was constructed, it was specific to India, Iran and Afghanistan, right? 2016 we signed an agreement for Chabahar port, and that aimed at connecting India to Afghanistan via Iran. Now the idea is that the future of Chabahar port would benefit from other countries participating in it. So here is another connectivity initiative which can be helpful for India. The use of Chabahar port by other Central Asian countries increases the relevance of the Chabahar port, because only building the Chabahar port and operating it is not going to go far. You have to make it viable, all right? And right now you are not servicing Afghanistan, so to say, primarily. So the need is to expand the Chabahar port and to ensure that Central Asian countries become a partner in this particular area. So that's another connectivity initiative that you can talk about. And then an initiative which makes sense in this context is TAPI. So the first phase of TAPI was launched in 2010. All right, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. And India owns 5% of stake in this pipeline. Not only India is a consumer, but India owns a 5% stake in this pipeline. All right. So the aim of this particular pipeline, the TAPI pipeline, aims to connect the gas fields of Turkmenistan with the energy markets of India and Pakistan. That's the simple aim, that it would be able to carry gas from one of the largest gas fields in the world in Turkmenistan to India and Pakistan, right? So first of all, it is in a sense part of the idea of an energy corridor, right? By linking energy producers with energy consumers. So that's what the TAPI does in the first place. That's the aim. And if you are aware of the background, it would become easier. So Tapi is a pipeline that generally is seen to be an idea of United States to begin with. All right, it is not to say United States is involved in any ways. Why is it the idea of United States? Because if you see 20 years back, in the first decade of 21st century, the US wanted to expand its reach in this region, and that became necessary after it came into Afghanistan. So either for its own interest, its competition with Russia, or its presence in Afghanistan. Central Asia received attention from Afghanistan. Second, there was another project which was called India-Pakistan-Iran pipeline. So the US did not want the India-Pakistan-Iran pipeline to go ahead. So in that context, the US suggested that rather than Iranian gas, the Central Asian gas can fulfill the needs of South Asian countries. So that was the idea. And from that idea, these countries, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, moved ahead on the path of constructing a Tapi pipeline, right? So US idea in terms of its strategic interest in this region. It wanted to wean away Central Asian countries from Russia, from dependence on Russia, because traditionally, where do the Central Asian countries sell their gas? Their traditional pipelines are towards the north. So what are the options? So then this is one option that US had proposed in terms of ideas, that there should be a pipeline between Central Asia and South Asia, because South Asia is where you will find energy consumers. And this would help then in Central Asian countries to move away from Russia, on which they were dependent. So thereby we can say that it is important or beneficial because it provides Turkmenistan diversity of options for its gas supplies, meaning it provides diversity of option in terms of markets where Turkmenistan can sell. Generally, Turkmenistan either sells to Iran. There is a gas exchange that takes place between Iran and Turkmenistan. All right. So that is one indirect route. Another indirect route is the American sponsored pipeline, which is right now not talked about. America had proposed a pipeline called BTC, Baku, Tbilisi, Sihan, right? Baku, Azerbaijan, and then going through Turkey and then going through the European market. So you see, if you look at today, in Ukraine-Russia crisis, we increasingly talk about one pipeline, which is what? Nord Stream. And if you look at today, we find that the Europeans are facing the prospect of a harsh winter, all right, because they have planned to move away from Russian gas. So this is not something that you realize in one day. You always realize that dependence on any one source of supply can be detrimental. So you keep on thinking. So now Nord Stream is talked about. That does not mean that thinking on energy infrastructure has not been there. It has been there. So that's why Tapi, BTC, Baku, Tbilisi, Sihan are pipelines that create options vis-a-vis Russia, all right, alternative to gas from Russia, all right, and these kinds of big projects cannot be imagined without the backing of a large country, all right. So then Turkmenistan either sells gas to Russia or now to China. So it would like to diversify its options. So what Tapi does is provides it diversity of options for its gas supplies, right? And it provides South Asian countries diversity of energy sources, meaning it adds to the options of countries like India or let's say Pakistan. Why? Because we traditionally also buy from the Gulf countries, and most of the times the concern is that if there is an instability in the Gulf, we would face an energy crisis or an energy problem. So in the long term, every country's interest is to diversify the energy basket, which means the use of different kinds of energy sources. All right. So you need to have coal, you need to have hydrocarbons, you need to have renewables, you need to have nuclear energy, and if possible in the future hydrogen, right? So that is one thing that every country wants, diversity of energy basket. But that is a long-term task. So the second thing that country would want is diversity of sources of supply. If you are buying from one part of the world, it's highly likely that there would be a time in which there may be an energy supply shock, right? So it provides South Asian countries diversity of energy sources. All right. And then since the pipeline is of natural gas, so natural gas being a relatively clean source of energy, would help South Asian economies. And these are the points that are being talked about these days a lot. South Asian economies in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So all you are doing is you are trying to make points. You are trying to create why this may be significant. So natural gas is relatively clean. So when this project was envisaged, or when this project was formulated, another option was that natural gas supplies, if these countries can move towards natural gas as main part of their energy basket, so it would reduce greenhouse gas emissions in South Asia, right? And see, you can relate it with what is happening today. So UPSC has ultimately asked you a question on clean energy options, all right? And that's why it makes sense that in most of the papers, when you're writing an answer, one point that you can always think about is environment, all right? So here is one option that we say that can help these countries reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Now if you see, these are all fine, but what we see is that there are certain limitations. What are the limitations? One is the complexity of the project in terms of financing and gas pricing. All right. So these are the things that need clarity. Where would the finance for this gas pipeline come from? So we see what has happened is, in this gas pipeline, the Turkmenistan leg, meaning Turkmenistan stage of the pipeline, is complete. And then the Afghanistan leg or Afghanistan part of the pipeline remains a non-starter, right? So Turkmenistan is the lead country in the implementation of this project. Turkmen company, Turkmengaz, is responsible for construction of this project. So Turkmenistan has completed its own leg of the pipeline, which is the smallest part of it. The larger part would pass through Afghanistan and then to Pakistan. So Afghanistan part, beginning had been made, but no progress has been made, right? So that basically tells you that the difficulty also lies in the context of security situation in Afghanistan. Security situation in Afghanistan. So we see that even when Afghanistan had a different government, the problem was the Taliban insurgency. Even now when Taliban is in power and Taliban is saying that we would support this project, we have other groups like ISIS targeting this project or prospectively targeting this project. So it's not sure how this project would be completed. Similarly, we see another difficulty is difficulties related to or difficulties in relations between India and Pakistan. So that is another question mark on this pipeline. Would it be ever completed? Right? So these are the difficulties. Now if you see, no major investor is going to invest in this kind of a project because it has security issues and it has uncertainties over the relationship between major partners. So that's why we said that financing is the issue. The pipeline may require investment around $8 billion US dollars, but it is not clear where would that investment come from. So some people say, for example, it may come from China, right? Because China has been taking up these kinds of projects. That is one possibility. So in the right context, people would say this pipeline may provide India and China an opportunity to work together. In the right context, अगर ऐसा possible हो कभी, so experts would say कि इस pipeline में India और China cooperate कर सकते हैं. But that is only speculation. Then there are companies like Total. नाम सुना है आपने Total? Total, BP, these are large petroleum companies. So Total was initially interested in this kind of a project. And that was a different time when US was in Afghanistan, when US indirectly was interested in this kind of project. But Total also withdrew. So the prospects of financing are still unclear. Where would the financing for this project come from? And ultimately, every such project starts with an initial agreement on gas pricing. So India, Pakistan, and Turkmenistan have signed an agreement on gas pricing initially. But by the time this project is completed, there is always a time delay. So we always think that in final, on the final occasion, there may be differences in gas pricing, right? जब आपने agreement किया था उसके बाद लंबा समय बीत गया. So then we think that gas pricing may become a sticky issue in the future. So that is basically what you should know about the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. Is India still participating in this project? Of course. Till India decides to withdraw, we would say that India is participating. But this project itself right now is not making much progress, right? So that is one thing that you will keep in mind. TAPI is still relevant. You can still talk about it as an example. TAPI has the potential and TAPI also has difficulties. And there are no easy solutions for these kinds of issues. So this is a matter of caution. This is what we focus on. So TAPI. And then you have other projects of which India is not a member. For example, there is a project called Lapis Lazuli Corridor. So again, Lapis Lazuli Corridor also is a trade transit agreement, meaning it wants to create a route through agreements and infrastructure investments to promote trade. Trade between whom? Trade starting from Afghanistan and reaching to Turkey and the European market. But India is not part of the Lapis Lazuli Corridor. But this gives you an idea of one thing, which is what? Which is that this region is witnessing a lot of interest in terms of trade transit routes or connectivity projects, right? So initially we had said why is Central Asia important? Because of its location. Because of its location at the heart of Eurasia. So thereby different kinds of connectivity projects connecting Asia with Europe are going to pass through this region. And there are certain initiatives in which immediately these countries are involved. So we know that one thing that we'll remember is very simple. India is not a part of Lapis Lazuli Corridor. All right, India is not part of this particular agreement, right? So we have some picture of connectivity initiative in this region. Another connectivity initiative in this region is BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. And we know that India is not part of this. So here the Chinese say that they are building what is called the Silk Route Economic Belt. All right. So these are various connectivity projects. Now we know what connectivity projects, either Ashgabat Agreement or TAPI or Lapis Lazuli Corridor or China's BRI, which in this leg is called Silk Route Economic Belt. So this is simply to have an idea about the region and its prospects in terms of connectivity. Now, when we look at the area of defense and security, before that you can also make note of one thing, that in Connect Central Asia, which is our policy, one thing that we had noted was, one thing that we had tried to do was focus on air connectivity. All right, focus on air connectivity. So basically the idea was to at least have one flight to each capital of Central Asian countries, right? One flight to each capital of Central Asian countries, so that there is at least an ease in movement for the people as tourists or for business purposes. So that is another form of connectivity that India has been thinking on, so far not very successful. So let's talk about defense and security cooperation. So one, we have mentioned it, that so far India has defined strategic partnerships with the countries of this region: Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. All right. So for example, with Kazakhstan we have a military exercise called Probal Dostik. All right, military exercise called Probal Dostik. In Tajikistan, many people say that India runs a base, but Tajikistan, you will remember, is geographically close to India, closest to India and Central Asian countries, and it is a neighbor of Afghanistan. So here at a location called Farkhor, India in the past operated a field hospital to support relief to, at that point in time, Northern Alliance. क्या है Northern Alliance? सुना है आपने? In what context? It was a force which was fighting Taliban in the 1990s. So at that point in time, India had a presence in Farkhor, which is a location in Tajikistan. So some people say that India maybe runs a secret military base here, right? And then we have with Kyrgyzstan a military exercise which is called Khanjar, right? So Khanjar is a military exercise with Kyrgyzstan, right? So this is how we will see that our military engagements, defense engagements, or engagements of larger strategic nature, operating some sorts of facilities, make the component of defense and security ties with these countries. Then what we understand is another part of this engagement is stability in Afghanistan. So meaning India and Afghanistan, or in Central Asia and Afghanistan, share one thing in common, that these are neighbors. So Central Asia has similar concerns in Afghanistan. So in the past, not so much currently, but in the past, one attempt of India was to draw Central Asian countries in efforts to stabilize Afghanistan, right? So that is another part of how we look at this region from security or defense perspective. And then we see that we find a common cause in cooperation against terrorism and radicalization. These are common issues. Terrorism and radicalization are common issues. So anything that you may be reading in newspaper, you will find that these kinds of issues are just mentioned, terrorism and radicalization. So for example, in this region, one particular geography which is, and I am mentioning this because UPSC tends to ask questions regarding where it is located. So Farghana Valley. So Farghana Valley is largely in Uzbekistan, but it is surrounded by multiple Central Asian countries. And Farghana Valley is where we hear about radicalization and the presence of terrorist groups or their offshoots like Al-Qaeda being active. So Farghana Valley is one example from this region of an area where there is an prospect of terrorism and radicalization. So this means, generally speaking, that don't we have relations with Turkmenistan? Yes, we have relations with Turkmenistan, but we don't define it as strategic partnership, because I told you yesterday, if you would remember, Turkmenistan generally has adopted neutrality in international relations. So we have relations, and Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline is one example of that. So we only said that strategic partnership, the relations which we have referred to as strategic partnership are these, right? So it does not mean that India does not have relations, right? So Farghana Valley, you will remember, is in Central Asia, and it is known in the context of the prospects of terrorism and radicalization in this region. And we also understand that there may be a limitation to India's outreach in terms of defense and security issues of the region, right? So border disputes and domestic instability. Border dispute and domestic instability. These are some of the local factors. So what are we saying is very simple, that if India wants to expand strategic ties with these countries, it would have to be cognizant of, aware of factors like the border disputes between these countries and domestic instability. Domestic instability, you will find examples. For example, in 2022, protests in Kazakhstan. All right, and none of these countries are extremely stable. They are stabilized by one factor, which is rule by strong men, meaning their presidents are generally presidents for life, right? So that is one factor of stability. But as democracy expands, as people protest, there is always a threat to these kinds of regime, domestic instability. So we saw violence breaking out in Kazakhstan, right? Border dispute between, let's say, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. So these are some of the local fault lines. So on some local issues, we may find larger commonality of cooperation, at least in terms of dialogue. On some issues, we would need to adopt a cautious approach, meaning we need to factor in our long-term policy what would happen in this kind of context, right? So this is something that we keep in mind in terms of the strategic defense and security scenario, either as examples of how India defines these relations, or how India then has certain engagements in terms of military exercises or locations like Farkhor in Tajikistan, how there are some issues which may be common, which may help us in constructing a dialogue in these areas, and how there are some factors which are of long-term significance which India need to be careful of, cautious of, instability in this particular region. So once we have learned this, what we need to move forward to is, after learning about certain specific things about Central Asia, how India engages with these countries collectively. So one thing that India does is becoming a member of SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So you would remember yesterday we had mentioned that the background of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is that it started as Shanghai 5 in 1995. The major issue was border stability, meaning this is an initiative that was started by China as a dialogue between its neighbors. So it involved China, Russia, and 3 Central Asian countries at that point in time, right? And the 3 Central Asian countries were Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. All right, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, plus China, plus Russia. They started having a dialogue. Why? 1995 is a time when these states have emerged as new states. And they have borders with these 2 larger neighbors, China and Russia. So China wants stability across the border, so it started this kind of a dialogue. Now, Shanghai 5 moved towards consolidation and it became SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in the year 2001. So in 2001, Uzbekistan joined the SCO. All right, Uzbekistan started participating in the SCO. So from the Shanghai 5, it became the SCO, and in the same year, Uzbekistan joined this initiative. Then it had further expansion. 2017, India and Pakistan joined the initiative, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So now Shanghai Cooperation Organization has 10 members, 8 members, not 10, 8 members. Who are they? 4 countries of Central Asia. Which are the 4 countries? Barring Turkmenistan, all the other Central Asian countries. Meaning Turkmenistan is the only Central Asian country which is not a member of SCO. So Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan from Central Asia. Then 2 permanent members of the Security Council, or 2 large neighbors of Central Asia, Russia and China. And then 2 countries of South Asia, India and Pakistan. So these are the members. So right now it has 8 members. And where is the secretariat of SCO? SCO is in news a lot. So you must have noticed where is the headquarters, secretariat. It is in Beijing, right? Just because the name is Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it does not mean the secretariat is in Shanghai. The secretariat is in Beijing, all right? And then it meets through various forms of meeting. There is meeting of officials, meeting of defense ministers, meeting of foreign ministers, but 2 meetings are important. And these meetings are that of Council of Heads of State and Council of Heads of Government. All right. So these are 2 important meetings, decision making forums at the SCO. And when there is a meeting of Council of Heads of State or Council of Heads of Government, we say there is a summit. And which summit is important? Council of Heads of States summit is the primary summit of the SCO. And we will remember in 2019, India had hosted the meeting of Council of Heads of Government. So far India has hosted 1 summit, and that is the meeting of Council of Heads of Government in 2019. And then you may recall that in 2023, the Council of Heads of State would take place in India. Why? Because India now has assumed the chair of SCO this year, right? So what is specific to India, we will try and remember, and then you will also remember. And for this I am also telling you what to focus on. People ask what to focus on when you are talking about organization. So these things. For example, 2022 summit, which is the meeting of heads of state, took place where? Samarkand in Uzbekistan, right? So it would not be difficult for you when you are writing the examination to at least notice these things. Kahan hua? Us saal, right? So that is something that we will remember, that these are 2 important decision making bodies of SCO, Council of Heads of State. So the highest summit is Council of Heads of State. It would be in news because India would be hosting it in 2023, and this year it took place in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. And then there is another summit which is Council of Heads of Government. The meeting of Council of Heads of Government was hosted by India once in 2019. And we would also remember that before 2017, India was a dialogue partner at the SCO. So these categories also exist, right? So for example, this year SCO has decided to make Maldives, Myanmar, UAE and Oman its dialogue partners. These are not terribly significant details, right? Some details are important in the context of aaya hai to pad lo, that's it, right? But you will remember these things. But next year there would be a new member of SCO, right? So we said this year 8 members. Now Iran is in the process of joining the SCO, and after that Belarus would be joining the SCO. Iran's membership formalities are complete, so next year Iran would be participating in the summit. Belarus membership has been approved, meaning it has initiated the membership. So 2023 that would be approved, the final membership would be approved. So the next member would be Belarus, right? So they are not members, remember. I am not saying that they are members, but you will see that in due course of time they would become members as they complete the formalities. As of now, 8 members. All right, and then in the short course of time it would have 10 members. So I am saying this, even membership, number of members is not very important. Why? Because in some cases it may keep on changing. But if it has been stable for many years, so at least you remember how many members are there. For example, WTO's membership can change, but it has remained stable for many years. So 164 members of WTO. SCO's membership can change, but it has remained stable for many years. So 8 members of SCO right now, right? The other details become irrelevant. Then there is another part of the structure of SCO. It is called RATS. Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure. The headquarters of RATS is Tashkent. All right. So Tashkent is the headquarter of RATS. RATS is Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure of the SCO. Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure. Right. So this is another part of the structure of SCO. So what is it that UPSC says you should be at least noticing? UPSC says structure and syllabus देखा है ना आपने? When UPSC says important international institutions, groupings and fora, उसके आगे UPSC क्या लिखता है? Structure and mandate. Syllabus में देखा है आपने? This is structure. All right. How many members? What are the bodies, important bodies of any organization if in terms of decision making? The format of meetings, right? Any other component, subgrouping within the organization. So this is called the structure. And then mandate. Mandate is simply what is the work of this organization. So it is argued that the mandate of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is guided by the Shanghai Spirit. All right, these are a set of principles. For example, relationship between these countries would be based on, और ये बहुत ज़्यादा terribly significant नहीं होता, लेकिन बहुत general होता है. Respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of the member countries. Meaning sovereign equality is one principle. Meaning non-interference is another principle in Shanghai Spirit, right? And then the idea is that this organization would work democratically, right? Meaning it would not be dominated by any. So these are the principles which are contained in Shanghai Spirit. And then it generally defines itself as all things: political, economic, cultural cooperation. So Shanghai Cooperation Organization says that it's an intergovernmental grouping which promotes political, economic and cultural cooperation among the member countries. But remember, when it started, its primary aim was to address security related issues. For example, cross-border stability. That is one thing that these countries had started talking on. So again, if you see, mandate, meaning what these organizations do, also does not tell you much, right? But you get a sense of it by reading newspaper. What has happened? So mostly in these organizations, what happens is dialogue, baatcheet. So that's why some people would say once they have learned. So first when you start learning international relations, you think SCO, ये जरूर कुछ important करता होगा. Then when you have read it, you realize कि ये तो केवल बात करता है. So that is the nature of international relations. Big bang कुछ नहीं होता international relations में, है ना? Big bang वही होता है जब एक बार रशिया ने यूक्रेन पे इन्वेड कर दिया. उसके बाद फरवरी के बाद अब तक क्या आ गया? फैटीग आ गया कि यार बार बार वही चीज़ छप रही है, वही चीज़ छप रही है. तो क्या होता है, आप अखबार पढ़ रहे होते हैं, फिर आप सोच रहे होते हैं कि अब इससे क्वेश्चन आ जाएगा. अब भाई एक ही चीज़ कई बार छप रही तो क्वेश्चन क्यों आएगा उससे? उसका एक बेसिक होगा, कुछ बेसिक्स होगा, और मान लो वो चीज़ व्हेन दैट हैज़ एंडेड you may need get a conclusion. That's it. So only thing that you can notice is what is it that India stands for, what is it that India says, right? तो कुछ स्पेशल ढूंढने की जरूरत नहीं है इस तरह के ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में. नाउ वी सी दैट व्हेन समिट्स टेक प्लेस, जनरली व्हाट इज इट दैट इज टॉक्ड अबाउट? सो वेल, देयर वुड बी जनरल प्लैटिट्यूड ऑन सर्टेन थिंग. जनरल प्लैटिट्यूड का मतलब हर कोई बात करेगा उसके बारे में. काउंटरिंग टेररिज्म, ऑल राइट, और रीजनल स्टेबिलिटी होनी चाहिए. एससीओ के देशों में कोऑपरेशन होना चाहिए. अब हमको इकोनॉमी के बारे में बात करना चाहिए. दीज आर द थिंग दैट दे वुड बी सेइंग. और कुछ नहीं होता. कुछ हुआ क्या एससीओ की मीटिंग से इस बार? हाँ, तो वहां पे हमको बस इतना देखना है कि क्या कुछ ऐसा अलग हो गया जिसकी वजह से कुछ हो सकता है. तो ऐसा नहीं है. सो समिट्स जनरली टॉक अबाउट कमिटमेंट्स कि ऐसा करेंगे वैसा करेंगे. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल दिस ईयर समिट, जैसे दिस ईयर समिट हैज डिक्लेयर्ड, लेट्स से उसका आउटकम, वन ऑफ द आउटकम्स इज वाराणसी एज द कल्चरल कैपिटल ऑफ एससीओ कंट्रीज फॉर 2022-23. तो ऐसा कुछ है तो हमने ध्यान दे दिया. अदरवाइज हर साल वही बात होती है कि इसको मेंबर बना देंगे, इसको ऑब्जर्वर बना देंगे, इसको ये बना देंगे. अफगानिस्तान में शांति होनी चाहिए, सबको प्रयास करना चाहिए शांति के लिए. कोविड-19 से हमको मुकाबला करना है तो कोऑपरेट करना चाहिए, हेल्थ के लिए, इकोनॉमी के लिए. जनरली यही बातें होती हैं. सो देयर बाय वी सिंपली वांट टू अंडरस्टैंड समथिंग इंडिया स्पेसिफिक, विच इज व्हाट आर द, or let's say what is the significance of SCO for India. What is the significance of SCO for India? UPSC, by the way, has asked a question on SCO in 2021, which is last year, if you have seen the question paper. So what is the significance of SCO? Meaning when India joined SCO, why did India join SCO? ये सवाल आपके दिमाग में आता होगा, कुछ स्टूडेंट्स के दिमाग में आता है. वो कहते हैं कि इतने सारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ज्वाइन करने का फायदा क्या है? भाई ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा ऑप्शन है हमारे पास. हर जगह हमको एक कुर्सी मिली हुई है ना. जैसे आपके पास, आप एयरपोर्ट जाओ तो आपके पास लाउंज एक्सेस है या लाउंज एक्सेस नहीं है. लाउंज एक्सेस नहीं है तो बाहर बैठोगे, लाउंज एक्सेस है तो अंदर बैठोगे. लेकिन एयरपोर्ट में आप रहने को तो जाते नहीं हो. एयरपोर्ट का आपका काम तो एक ही है कि आपको एयरपोर्ट जाना है और वहाँ से कहीं और जाना है. All right, so it basically increases your options. It increases your options. वैसे ही जैसे एक पेन से काम चल सकता है, लेकिन आपके पास 4-5 पेन होते हैं, है ना. तो एक पेन ने काम नहीं किया तो दूसरा पेन, दूसरे पेन ने काम नहीं किया तो तीसरा पेन. So it depends on purposes. What purpose you have, what you see to be important. It generally should be seen in terms of options. So one, it is very clear that membership of SCO provides in India an opportunity to enhance its reach and presence in Central Asia and Eurasia. राइट सो क्या कर रहा है भाई, आपको टेबल पे कुर्सी मिल गई, अब आप वहां जाके बैठ सकते हैं. सो दिस इज वन वे ऑफ इनहांसिंग इंडियाज रीच एंड प्रेजेंस इन अ रीजन वेयर इंडिया इज in certain sense weak. We don't have a direct reach there. So this organization provides us presence and reach. It helps us in enhancing engagements with the Central Asian republics. All right, it helps us in enhancing our engagements with Central Asian republics, meaning we are meeting them bilaterally. पर ये possible नहीं कि हर साल हर देश जा पाएं. All right, so it is quite possible to meet them at these kinds of summits. So what do you notice? That ultimately these kinds of organizations are diplomatic platforms which facilitate meeting between countries. It helps us in engagements with other important countries in the region. So for example, you will notice one thing. For example, जब पहले हम जाते तो Afghanistan used to participate, so we will have a meeting with Afghanistan. Iran was a dialogue partner, so Iranian leader would come. So we would have meeting with Iran. मतलब ये ऐसा है कि ये किसी शादी में जाते हो तो कई लोग मिल जाते हैं जिनसे आप मिल नहीं पाते हो, है ना. तो यहाँ इस शादी में चले गए, खाना खाया और बातचीत की. ऑल राइट. और शादियों में और क्या होता है भाई, शादी में जब दो लोग मिलते हैं, पीपल मीट इन द मैरिजेस, दे ऑल्सो फिक्स अप द मैरिज ऑफ समवन एल्स. दिस इज व्हाट हैपेंस. इज अ डिप्लोमेटिक प्लेटफॉर्म, मीटिंग्स. ऑल राइट. और इसी को मैं 3 तरीके से लिख दिया. This is what, same thing, you can make 3 points out of it, right? अब इसका चौथा पॉइंट ही बना देते हैं. It helps in deepening ties with a traditional partner like Russia. ट्रेडिशनल पार्टनर लाइक रशिया. क्या होता है, अब मेंबर्स को देख लो. कुछ हमारे दोस्त हैं, कुछ हमारे दुश्मन हैं, ऐसे ही समझते हो. तो दोस्तों के साथ दोस्ती मजबूत करने का मौका देता है ना. मतलब इनसे जो स्पेसिफिक बात है, जैसे इस साल ये इमेज बहुत ही फेमस हो गई कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर मिस्टर मोदी एंड प्रेसिडेंट मिस्टर पुतिन आर सिटिंग साइड बाय साइड. तो ऑन द, इसको कहते हैं ऑन द साइड लाइन्स द प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑल्सो मेट. राइट. तो किन से मिल रहे हैं, इधर ट्रेडिशनल पार्टनर्स और जो लोग दोस्त नहीं है. तो इस बार ये शी जिनपिंग से नहीं मिले, ना शी जिनपिंग इनफॉर्मल एक्टिविटीज में शामिल हुए, ना प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी इनफॉर्मल एक्टिविटीज में शामिल हुए. क्यों, कुछ लोगों का कहना है कि एक दूसरे को अवॉइड करना चाहते थे. राइट. सो बी दैट एज इट मे, बट कुछ सालों में कुछ साल हम मिल भी लेते हैं आपस में, चाइना के साथ भी मिल लेते हैं, है ना. एंड देन it helps, the membership helps in balancing the influence of China and Pakistan. देखो, ऐसा होता है कि आप किसी की बुराई करते हो, आपको बहुत सारे लोग नहीं पसंद होंगे, है ना. जैसे मान लो आप मुझे पसंद नहीं करते, मेरे सामने आके तो मुझसे नहीं बोलोगे, पीछे ही बोलोगे. तो वही मतलब है इसका. मतलब हम टेबल पे हैं तो हो सकता है कि हमारे खिलाफ कुछ जो हो रहा हो वो ना हो. तो ये बैलेंसिंग जो है इस चीज को रेफरेंस है. दैट इट हेल्प्स अस, गिव्स अस एन अपॉर्चुनिटी टू शेप इन सम वेज द आउटकम्स, ताकि कुछ भी इंडिया के खिलाफ नहीं हो पाए. लेकिन ऐसा है कि कुछ लोग ऐसे होते ही हैं जिनको ये कर्टसी पता नहीं, कि भाई आपकी ओपिनियन अपने पास रखिए, लेकिन कुछ लोग हैं जो नहीं, मेरी ओपिनियन मैं बता के रहूँगा। जैसे पाकिस्तान, पाकिस्तान वुड मेक स्टेटमेंट्स, फॉर एग्जाम्पल इट मेड अ स्टेटमेंट a few years back on Kashmir 2020 में. So that is also an opportunity where we object कि नहीं, हम object करते हैं, I don't agree or we criticize. So that is the meaning of balancing your interests here. दोस्तों से दोस्ती गहरी कर सकते हैं, दुश्मनों से एक तरह का कांटेक्ट बना के रख सकते हैं. That's the meaning of it. That's the simple meaning of it, right? And then when we joined, we expected to benefit from the expertise, expected to benefit from the expertise of rats in terrorism. Rats is an expert structure, meaning it's a facility जहाँ पे कुछ लोग कंप्यूटर के सामने बैठे हैं, फोन वोन रखे हुए हैं, एंड दे आर कोलेटिंग इंफॉर्मेशन, इंटेलिजेंस. ऑल राइट, तो कुछ लोग इंटेलिजेंस गैदर कर रहे होंगे, तो कुछ लोग इंटेलिजेंस कोलेट भी करते हैं, है ना, एक दूसरे तक पहुंचाने का काम करते हैं. सो इट इज एन एक्सपर्ट बॉडी विच कीप्स एन आई ऑन इशूज लाइक टेररिज्म, रेडिकलाइजेशन एंड ड्रग ट्रैफिकिंग in this region. So we expect that at least in terms of information we may benefit from the expertise of RATS, Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure. Or SCO countries also conduct counter-terrorism military exercises, है ना. और basically ये जब एक्सरसाइज होती है तो क्या होता है, हम इमेजिन कर रहे होते हैं कि टेररिज्म के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम कैसे लड़ेंगे टेररिज्म से. किसी कोई टेररिस्ट एक्ट होगा तो हम कैसे लड़ेंगे उससे. ये प्रैक्टिस है बेसिकली, है ना. तो बहुत सारे लोगों को बहुत भारी लगने लगता है कि काउंटर टेररिज्म मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइज मतलब कि कुछ हो रहा होगा. यहाँ पे कुछ नहीं हो रहा, प्रैक्टिस हो रही है. ऑलराइट, जैसे हमारी भी आर्म्ड फोर्सेज जब ट्रेनिंग कर रही होती हैं तो वो एक्चुअली टेररिस्ट से तो लड़ नहीं रही होती हैं, है ना. वो एक सिनेरियो क्रिएट करती हैं, वहाँ पे उस सिनेरियो के अंदर रोल और ऑपरेशन को कैसे कंडक्ट करेंगे ये प्रैक्टिस कर रही होती हैं. सो ऐसा ही इस मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइज में भी होता है. सो SCO military exercises help provide exposure to Indian armed forces. All right, meaning we are working with different kinds of militaries here in a particular scenario. So it is one other way of gaining experience कि भाई हाँ चलो उसके साथ कैसे काम करना है. तो मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइज में जनरली क्या होता है, मैंने आपको दो शब्द बताए थे कि व्हाट हैपेंस, व्हाई आर मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइजेज इंपॉर्टेंट. डू यू रिमेंबर? किसी ने मुझसे सवाल पूछा था क्लास में, मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइज क्या होता है. दो वर्ड बताए थे मैंने आपको. इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी याद है आपको? इंटरऑपरेबिलिटी मीनिंग एबिलिटी टू वर्क टुगेदर. That is what happens in military exercises. So when we are saying that we are participating in SCO military exercise, what is happening is it's providing us an exposure to work in different conditions with different kinds of people, different kinds of militaries. In simple terms, experience. That's it. So that is what we aim to gain from, right? And it also helps in minimizing the impact of Pakistan's propaganda, let's say, which means what? It simply means, जैसा मैंने आपको पहले ही कहा कि पाकिस्तान अगर कुछ कहता है हमारे खिलाफ तो हम वहाँ प्रेजेंट हैं उस बात को रखने के लिए. हम चाइना के साथ अलग काम कर सकते हैं, रशिया के साथ अलग काम कर सकते हैं, ऑलराइट, और पाकिस्तान को इग्नोर कर सकते हैं और टेररिज्म के बारे में बात कर सकते हैं. तो जब भी हम यहाँ जाते हैं तो हम हमेशा कहते हैं क्रॉस बॉर्डर स्टेट स्पॉन्सर्ड टेररिज्म इज अ थ्रेट. इसका मतलब क्या है? हाँ मतलब पाकिस्तान अगर अपनी बात रख रहा है, कह रहा है, और ऑब्वियसली वो इंडिया की बुराई ही करेगा, तो हमारे पास ये मौका है अपनी बात रखने का, तो हम भी क्या करेंगे, बुराई कर सकते हैं। बुराई करने में अच्छा लगता है सबको, है ना। एवरीबडी लाइक्स टू क्रिटिसाइज बिकॉज क्रिटिसिज्म इज ईजी, क्रिटिसिज्म इज चीप। ऑलराइट, मुझे ये चीज़ पसंद नहीं है, दिस इज ईजी ऑप्शन। बट लोगों से कह दो आपको क्या पसंद है, पीपल विल बी कंफ्यूज्ड। मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल डोंट नो देयर चॉइस, मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल नो देयर डिसलाइक्स। मुझे ये पसंद नहीं, ये ठीक नहीं है, ये ठीक नहीं है, ये ठीक नहीं है, ये ठीक नहीं है, ये ठीक नहीं है। जब आंसर लिखोगे इवैल्यूएशन में मोस्ट often you will find points like include this, include this, include this, include this, include this. You have not written this, you have not written this, you have not written this. But the key is how do I write this, how do I include this, है ना। मतलब आंसर तो 150 में ही लिखना है और 250 में ही लिखना है। सो इट इज ऑलवेज ईजी टू टेल यू कि ये भी कर सकते हैं, 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 ये भी कर सकते हैं। कर तो सब कुछ सकते हैं, पर सवाल है कैसे। ऑलराइट, सो नाउ तो पहले हमने कह दिया क्या फायदा हो सकता है, अब कहते हैं कि क्या है लिमिटेशंस, चैलेंजेस। तो समबडी हैज आस्क्ड, ये क्वेश्चन किसी ने पूछा, हिमांशु, यूपीएससी ने पूछा क्रिटिकली एनालाइज एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स ऑफ एससीओ। इसमें क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस कैसे एक्सप्लेन करेंगे? बिल्कुल करेंगे। पर पहली चीज तो ये क्वेश्चन पूरा नहीं है। ऑलराइट, कुड यू प्लीज सेंड मी द फुल क्वेश्चन। सो ये क्वेश्चन जो है केवल यही नहीं था कि एक्सप्लेन करें एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को, ये भी था इंडिया के लिए। ऑलराइट, इंडिया के लिए। सो हम बिल्कुल क्रिटिकली एनालाइज कर सकते हैं। तो उसका एक पार्ट ये है लिमिटेशंस। मतलब हमको खुश होने की जरूरत नहीं है, लिमिटेशंस हैं, फंडामेंटल डिफरेंसेस हैं। एट एससीओ व्हाट वी सी इज दैट देयर आर limitations in terms of differences with whom? China, Pakistan. So it is not an organization where everybody is our friend, right? Second thing, limitation also comes from the fact that our ability to influence the agenda setting is limited. Why? Because this organization is dominated by two large powers already. ये सार्क नहीं है, ये बिम्स्टेक नहीं है, चाइना एंड रशिया, राइट। सो ये दो चीजें तो आपको पता ही है कि देयर में बी डिफरेंसेस एंड एजेंडा सेटिंग। दिस इज, सिंस दिस इज नॉट एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इन आवर प्राइमरी स्फीयर, so it would be difficult. So one issue is very clear: limited scope for India to shape the agenda of SCO. Limited scope for the agenda of SCO. All right. Meaning, since SCO is already dominated by two large countries, China and Russia, they are the primary agenda setters. All right. They are the most influential ones. Since Central Asian countries are geographically located in this region, and that is where the organization started, they and their priorities are reflected more. So our ability to shape the agenda is always going to be limited. Similarly, if you look at the membership, SCO sometimes is perceived, some people say it is perceived as anti-West. So some people call it an anti-NATO. Ki later on, SCO may develop into an anti-NATO. Meaning here Russia and China are taking a stand. Russia and China are mainly Western. So it is perceived to be anti-West. It is perceived to be anti-NATO. Thereby, it requires a difficult balancing act on the part of India. All right, what difficult balancing act? We are not very comfortable with being anti-West or anti-anyone. We are not anti-West. But the thing is कि हमको हर पार्टी में जाना है. तो जनरली कैसा होता है, क्या कोई मेरा दोस्त है या मेरा दुश्मन है? लोग ऐसे ही समझते हैं, मेरा दोस्त है या मेरा दुश्मन है। और इंटरनेशनल रिलेशन को भी लोग ऐसे ही समझते हैं, मेरा दोस्त है या मेरा दुश्मन है, जबकि ऐसा होता नहीं है। सो व्हेन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ वेस्ट एंड इंटरेस्ट ऑफ इंडिया, interest of China and Russia are diverging. In that context, SCO is perceived to be anti-West. So what it does is we need to do the explaining. कि नहीं, we don't agree with everything that the SCO stands for. Now we also see that differences, जैसे हमने कहा, differences on key issues like what? Like connectivity. In what sense? In one specific sense, on the issue of BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. Meaning what? While all the other members of SCO have endorsed the BRI, India is the only one which remains critical of the BRI, which does not want to participate in the BRI. तो क्या होता है, when there are joint statements, in the joint statement connectivity, BRI are mentioned many a time. So India says that no, we don't endorse that part of the joint statement. बाकी point 1 से लेके point 9 तक हम एग्री करते हैं, point 10 से हम एग्री नहीं करते. So that difference is there. Other countries have endorsed the BRI, India has not endorsed the BRI. So that is a contradiction that is there. Similarly, differences in terms of different specific concerns on terrorism. So if we aim to benefit in issue areas like terrorism, what we need to understand that there may be a general commonality, meaning SCO condemns terrorism in any form anywhere. ऐसा statement हो जाता है, पर ऐसा स्टेटमेंट नहीं होगा कि SCO condemns the terrorism supported by Pakistan. All right? So SCO's concern generally can be terrorism, and terrorism is a larger global issue. All right? But our specific concern is cross-border terrorism coming from Pakistan. So we don't have specific recourse to any specific solution in terms of terrorism. Approach may differ. SCO's primary focus has been terrorism and radicalization in Central Asia. Anything that destabilizes regimes, governments in Central Asia, that is SCO's focus. That is RAT's focus. So there may be a general commonality in terms of terrorism as a transnational issue, but not specific commonality in terms of approach or concerns. समझ में आ गई आपको बात? कहीं भी हो सकता है ये, कोई भी देश आपसे एग्री कर सकता है कि क्या कॉमन है हमारे बीच में, हम दोनों को टेररिज्म पसंद नहीं है. पर ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है कि कोई भी देश इस बात से भी एग्री करे कि हम पाकिस्तान का नाम लेंगे. बट इफ इंडिया हैज टू एड्रेस इट्स स्पेसिफिक कंसर्न, इट इज अबाउट पाकिस्तान. So there may be divergence in terms of approach also. On connectivity, BRI, there is a direct divergence. On terrorism, there is a difference in approach or specific focus. SCO focuses more on Central Asia or terrorism in Central Asia or regime instability, government or state instability in Central Asia. India focuses more on terrorism emanating from across the border. So that is where also we would have differences, right? So that is the limitation. So one part of critical analysis is always this: you first praise something and then you criticize it. All right? So that is one part of critical analysis. So then the question is, what should be India doing? All right? What should be India doing in this context? And now we are combining the points in the context of both Central Asia and SCO. So India should focus on areas like energy and connectivity. So we should identify ways in which these purposes can be met. So for example, as I have said, we can have our own suggestion on connectivity, right? For example, this year India suggested creation of a digital highway. among SCO countries. So that is one focus. Or apart from BRI, there are other focuses also. Russian President Vladimir Putin had the idea of SCO as an energy club. All right, President Putin had said that SCO can act as an energy club. Why? Because SCO has both energy producers and energy consumers. So SCO as an energy club, we should be focusing on these areas, how we take advantage in these areas, how we promote cooperation in these areas. It is relevant as a suggestion in the context of Central Asia as well as SCO. All right, and India should take advantage of its presence at SCO to observe and gain understanding of key issues in the region. Meaning, कहीं भी जाने का क्या फायदा होता है? लोगों की बात सुन सकते हैं आप, लोगों की बात सुनने में बहुत मजा आता है लोगों को, है ना? कुछ लोग आप बैठे हो दूसरे से बात करो तो उनकी आदत है कि वो आपकी बात सुन रहे होंगे. It means presence at SCO provides us an opportunity to observe, understand the importance or important areas of discussions in this region. That is what we should keep doing, right? Now, the efforts should focus on stability in Afghanistan. So there are certain key issues in which SCO may be of relevance. Afghanistan. So gradually we have started moving towards Afghanistan. अभी हमने फैसला किया हम अपनी एम्बेसी खोलेंगे. ऑल राइट, यहाँ हम ह्यूमैनिटेरियन असिस्टेंस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं. तो हमको देखना चाहिए हम कैसे SCO का और सेंट्रल एशियन देशों के साथ रिलेशंस का फायदा उठा सकते हैं इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में. ये एफर्ट हमारा होना चाहिए क्योंकि हम अफगानिस्तान को छोड़ने वाले नहीं हैं, छोड़ के जा नहीं रहे. तो इसका मतलब ये है कि हमको ऑप्शंस ढूंढने हैं. तो SCO का इस्तेमाल अफगानिस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, सेंट्रल एशियन देशों के साथ रिलेशंस का इस्तेमाल अफगानिस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में कर सकते हैं. एफर्ट शुड फोकस ऑन स्टेबिलिटी इन अफगानिस्तान एंड SCO डिस्कसेस इट. There is a discussion on Afghanistan every time that SCO meets. All right, there is defense ministers meeting which discusses Afghanistan. तो अब अमेरिका नहीं है तो SCO एक नियर पावर हो सकता है which can ensure stability in Afghanistan. Control over Taliban through cooperation. तो डायरेक्टली नहीं कर सकते कोऑपरेट, तो SCO के थ्रू कर सकते हैं. तो ये एक ऑप्शन है. And then India should focus on convergence between its own initiatives and initiatives in Central Asia. What kind of initiatives? So now the examples that we have used, for example, Chabahar, Ashgabat Agreement, INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor, and Lapis Lazuli Corridor, and तापी. अलग अलग देखने की बजाय we should try and make linkages. We should, for example, try and link Chabahar with Central Asian republics. We should make it attractive for them because they want access to Indian Ocean. So we can link it with Ashgabat Agreement, or Turkmenistan Iran rail line, which is a project proposed in this particular region. Similarly, we have INSTC. At INSTC, the primary port is in Iran, so we can use Chabahar port, connect Chabahar port with INSTC project. And Lapis Lazuli corridor, we are not a member of it, we can become a member of it, seek membership here. And TAPI, it is already going on, right? So TAPI is a specific project in the context of energy, building convergence between them, linking them, partnering with other countries, newer countries in these particular areas. Then what should happen? Focusing on bilateral ties with Central Asian republics. This is something that we should be doing. At what level? We generally have government to government engagements which are there. So visits or appointment of consulates, opening of embassies, strengthening of embassies, but also at the business to business levels, but also at the people to people level. There are a lot of people now who are traveling. They make some interesting vlogs. बहुत सारे vlogger आ गए, हाँ? Nomad Shubham, बहुत सारे नाम हैं. I am generally interested in this because ये यंग लोग ये सब काम कर सकते हैं. भाई मेरे बस की बात नहीं है अब कि मैं सेंट्रल एशिया अकेले चला जाऊं. So this is how you explore the world. Somebody from India went to Central Asia, आपका इंटरेस्ट आ गया है, नोमाड शुभम आ गया. So that is what we are saying. Governments can go a particular distance. Businesses can bridge the remaining gap, but ultimately people, more number of tourists, direct flight connectivity with Central Asian capitals. If that is there, more number of scholarships to the students of Central Asia. मेरे साथ भी जब मैं पढ़ता था तो there was Central Asian students who were studying. So that at least in the young age gave me an opportunity to know that दुनिया भारत से बड़ी है और भारत दुनिया में है. So इसका मतलब बहुत सारे तरीके से हम engage कर सकते हैं, right? Scholarships to students of Central Asia in Indian universities और promotion of tourism जैसे वाराणसी as the cultural capital in SCO, all right? Or visa on arrival or direct flight to each of the capitals, all right? और उसके बाद बिजनेस टू बिजनेस टाइज का मतलब जैसे हमने इंडिया सेंट्रल एशिया बिजनेस काउंसिल बनाया है, किस लिए? डायलॉग बिटवीन द बिजनेस कम्युनिटीज. सो इंसेंटिवाइजिंग प्रमोटिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट्स फ्रॉम इंडिया इन सेंट्रल एशिया, मतलब अदानी जी को जाके सेंट्रल एशिया में भी कुछ खरीदना चाहिए. सो दैट इज हाउ बिजनेसेस, अदानी, टाटा, रिलायंस, बहुत पैसा है हमारे कुछ बड़ी कंपनीज के पास, हमेशा बात करते रहते हैं उसकी. सो नाउ इज द टाइम टू कन्वर्ज ऑल दीज एफर्ट्स इन वन. अकेले गवर्नमेंट नहीं कर पाएगी, अकेले बिजनेसेस नहीं कर पाएंगे और अकेले लोग नहीं कर पाएंगे. सो दैट इज समथिंग दैट वी शुड अंडरस्टैंड दैट दीज काइंड्स ऑफ एफर्ट्स आर रिक्वायर्ड. बायलैटरल रिलेशंस, रीजनल रिलेशंस विद सेंट्रल एशियन कंट्रीज. सो नाउ द क्वेश्चन, भारत में दुनिया है. मोहन का हमेशा एक आइडिया अलग होता है, ये इनको प्रूव करना है पॉइंट. भारत में दुनिया है, पहले S-400 आ जाए फिर बाद में देखेंगे. सो मोहन शर्मा जी, ये कमेंट में देखता रहता हूं. We all agree with you, Mohan ji. All right. So, question is, critically examine the aims and objectives of SCO. Critically examine. अब ये सब शब्द बहुत भारी लगने लगते हैं. Critically examine. देखो, प्रैक्टिकल सिचुएशन में करना वही होता है. कुछ पॉजिटिव पॉइंट, कुछ नेगेटिव पॉइंट और सॉल्यूशन, कंक्लूजन हमेशा सॉल्यूशन ओरिएंटेड और पॉजिटिव इन नेचर. दैट इज समथिंग दैट यू शुड ऑलवेज रिमेंबर. लेकिन जब प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हो तो सजेशन कोई भी दे रहा है, कोई बुराई नहीं है, पर सजेशन देने वाला ये भी जानता है. आजकल प्रॉब्लम क्या है, लोगों को अपनी एजेंसी में भरोसा नहीं है. उनको लगता है कोई ऐसा है, जैसे डॉक्टर है, मुझे एक गोली दे देगा मेरी जिंदगी बदल जाएगी. नहीं, यू हैव टू मेक एफर्ट्स. कोई ऐसा है, टीचर ऐसा कुछ बता देगा कि मेरी जिंदगी बदल जाएगी, यूपीएससी हो जाए. नहीं, यू हैव टू मेक योर एफर्ट्स. सो व्हेन समबडी इज गिविंग यू अ सजेशन, इंक्लूड दिस, इंक्लूड दैट, you also have the judgment. What is it that I should be including and what is it that I should not be including? तो अपना भी judgment लगाना है आपको. राइट. सो सिमिलरली यू हैव टू हैव योर ओन सिंपल फ्रेमवर्क बिकॉज देर आर नो परफेक्ट आंसर्स. ऐसा कोई परफेक्ट आंसर नहीं है. आपका अपना रिफ्लेक्शन. मैं आपकी लैंग्वेज तो चेंज नहीं कर सकता, कर सकता हूं. कुछ की लैंग्वेज मुझसे बेहतर होगी, कुछ की लैंग्वेज मेरे जैसी होगी, कुछ की लैंग्वेज का रिलेशन थोड़ा उतना अच्छा नहीं होगा. ऐसा होता है. सो यू हैव टू फाइंड आउट व्हाट इज योर बेस्ट वे. दैट्स इट. आप कभी कोई और नहीं बन सकते. राइट. टॉपर टॉक्स सुनने के बाद टॉपर ने कहा ये करो, तो आप भी सोचे ना कैसे करेंगे. राइट. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल यू नीड टू नो योरसेल्फ, क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन व्हाट. नाउ इट सेज एम्स एंड objectives of the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, full stop. All right. चलो फिर उसके बाद क्वेश्चन क्या कहता है, what importance does it hold for इंडिया. ऑल राइट. सो पहले तो दो पार्ट का क्वेश्चन है, 15 मार्कर है. सो यू हैव टू डू जस्टिस विथ दीज बोथ पार्ट्स. सो क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन व्हाट एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. पहला पार्ट क्या होगा आंसर का, फैक्चुअल. ऑल राइट. फैक्चुअल. फैक्चुअल माने क्या, यू विल स्टार्ट विद द इजी थिंग्स दैट एससीओ वाज फॉर्म्ड इन 2001 और एससीओ विथ 8 मेंबर्स फॉर्म्ड इन 2001 is an important intergovernmental body or organization in Central Asia और in Eurasia. ऐसा कुछ लिखोगे. सो फैक्चुअल. फैक्चुअल बता दिया. अब एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स. अब एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स के बारे में आपको क्या क्या पता है, क्या क्या बताया है मैंने. फर्स्ट, इट्स वर्क इज गाइडेड बाय शांघाई स्पिरिट. ये तो जार्गन पता ही है आपको. शांघाई स्पिरिट विच इज व्हाट, विच इज अ सेट ऑफ प्रिंसिपल्स गाइडिंग द रिलेशंस बिटवीन इंडिया, guiding the relations between the members of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which stands for what? Which stands for certain principles like relations would be based on sovereign equality or mutual non-interference. All right? Or let's say democratic multilateralism or decision making. Remember all the countries of SCO. SCO's one objective is reforming multilateralism. जैसे multilateral organizations काम करें, संघाई स्पिरिट. दूसरा क्या हमको पता है, दूसरा हमको ये पता है, इकोनॉमिक, कल्चरल, पॉलिटिकल engagements. That's its objective, promoting economic, cultural and political engagements, and on one element it's security or regional stability. ठीक है. तो ये हमको एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स पता है. अब हम कैसे क्रिटिसाइज कर सकते हैं. पहली चीज, 1, diffused focus and lack of आउटकम्स, कॉन्क्रीट आउटकम्स. ये मोस्ट ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का क्रिटिसिज्म हो सकता है. क्या भाई, इकोनॉमिक, कल्चरल, पॉलिटिकल, सिक्योरिटी, अब इसमें यूपीएससी का सिलेबस भी जोड़ लो, बचा क्या कोऑपरेशन में. सो डिफ्यूज्ड एरिया ऑफ फोकस एज इट डिफाइंस इट. एंड देयर बाय आर यू अवेयर ऑफ एनी कॉन्क्रीट आउटकम्स कमिंग आउट ऑफ एससीओ, कि एससीओ ने कोई बैंक बना दिया हो, एससीओ ने कोई फ्री ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट कर लिया हो, पता है आपको. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ब्रिक्स के साथ भी हम ये कह सकते हैं कि ऐसा था, लेकिन ब्रिक्स ने क्या बनाया, एनडीबी, न्यू डेवलपमेंट बैंक, और कंटिंजेंसी रिजर्व अरेंजमेंट. एटलीस्ट सम कॉन्क्रीट आउटकम इज देयर. सो डिफ्यूज्ड फोकस एंड कॉन्क्रीट एंड लैक ऑफ मेजर आउटकम्स. ठीक है. सेकेंडली, अब हम क्रिटिसाइज कर देते हैं इसको, सिक्योरिटी एंड रीजनल इंस्टेबिलिटी. चलो एक कॉन्क्रीट एग्जांपल ले सकते हैं. इनइफेक्टिव इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ अफगानिस्तान। क्या किया अफगानिस्तान में? पीस कीपिंग फोर्स भेजी, सिचुएशन को स्टेबलाइज करने के लिए, यूएस को रिप्लेस करने के लिए आए, ऐसा कुछ किया? भाई आपकी आंखों के सामने अफगानिस्तान went through instability and you have been existing since 2001. So regional stability अगर आपका गोल है, security अगर आपका गोल है, तो ineffective in the context of Afghanistan. That's one concrete example. हो गया? अब एक और क्रिटिसाइज कर देते हैं। क्या क्रिटिसाइज कर सकते हैं? प्रिंसिपल क्या है आपका? शांघाई स्पिरिट। सो शांघाई स्पिरिट इज ऑब्जर्व्ड मोर इन वायलेशन। ऑलराइट, मीनिंग शांघाई स्पिरिट अगर है तो उसका वायलेशन ज्यादा होता है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, डोमिनेशन ऑफ चाइना एंड रशिया। चलिए, इफ दिस इज नॉट क्लियर, सो यू सी अब हम कहते हैं सोवरेन इक्वालिटी, नॉन इंटरफियरेंस, रिस्पेक्ट फॉर टेरिटोरियल इंटीग्रिटी। चाइना violated the principles against India, which is a member of SCO, by violating the LAC. तो क्या आप मान रहे हैं अपने कंडक्ट में? पाकिस्तान, another member of SCO, interference where in India's domestic affairs, that is what India says. So इनका कोई आंसर ऐसा नहीं है कि जो आप नहीं लिख सकते, आप लिख सकते हैं। आपको जनरली कुछ कॉन्क्रीट चीजें पता होना चाहिए, जैसे कि शांघाई स्पिरिट जो एक चीज है, ये कॉन्क्रीट हो गया। अब टॉपर क्या करेंगे? लिखेंगे यही, पर उनको पता है कि शांघाई स्पिरिट लिखना है और इसको अंडरलाइन करना है। ऑलराइट, उनको पता है कि उनको एग्जाम्पल देना है, जनरल पॉइंट्स भी देने हैं, एग्जाम्पल भी देने हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल अफगानिस्तान। ऑलराइट, दूसरा, उनको अब शांघाई स्पिरिट का इस्तेमाल किया तो क्रिटिसाइज शांघाई स्पिरिट करेंगे कि प्रिंसिपल तो है आपका सोवरेन इक्वालिटी, नॉन इंटरफियरेंस, बट इट इज क्वाइट एविडेंट दैट दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस वर्किंग आर डोमिनेटेड बाय रशिया एंड चाइना, टू लार्जर कंट्रीज. Secondly, some of its members have violated the Shanghai spirit itself in their relation with other member. China at the LAC vis-a-vis India, and Pakistan by promoting terrorism vis-a-vis India. Right? Similarly, you can make a separate point out of these. अगर एग्जाम्पल 250 वर्ड में लिखना है, देखो 250 वर्ड में अगर 150 वर्ड में लिखना है तो प्रिंसिपल्स की बात करेंगे और एक एग्जाम्पल दे देंगे। 250 वर्ड्स में लिखना है तो ये दो अलग अलग पॉइंट्स बन सकते हैं। बन सकते हैं, बिल्कुल बन सकते हैं। तो हो गया क्रिटिसिज्म ऑफ एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स का, क्या और भी कुछ चाहिए? राइट, क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन. सो हिमांशु, दैट इज द आंसर टू योर क्वेश्चन. द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चन इज significance for India. Right? What importance does it hold for India? अब what importance does it hold for India का मतलब ये लगाएंगे तो आंसर हो जाएगा। अगर ये कहेंगे कि नहीं, एम्स एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव्स का क्या सिग्निफिकेंस है, इफ यू स्टार्ट रीडिंग इट सेपरेटली तो मुश्किल हो जाएगी, आंसर नहीं लिख पाओगे। राइट? सो व्हाट सिग्निफिकेंस डज इट होल्ड फॉर इंडिया? हमने बात की सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ मेंबरशिप ऑफ एससीओ फॉर इंडिया। ऑलराइट, सो स्मार्ट व्यक्ति 4 पॉइंट वहां से चुन लेगा. They will choose 4 points from there, what we have talked about, and then ultimately a smart person also, because UPSC has not asked कि अब आगे क्या करना चाहिए. So a smart person would understand कि कुछ suggestion भी दे देता हूँ. क्या suggestion? That India should be focusing on areas like energy and connectivity, because this is what India keeps on talking about, or bring the point of culture. For example, in 2019, India had hosted a virtual exhibition of Buddhist relics, highlighting the commonality of Buddhism between the SCO countries. All right? और फिर इस साल इंडिया जब होस्ट कर रहा होगा तो यही सारी चीज़ें कर रहा होगा. ऑल राइट, इवेंट्स ऑर्गेनाइज हो रहे होंगे. वाराणसी में बुद्धिज्म को हम हाईलाइट कर रहेंगे. वाराणसी का भी एक बुद्धिज्म लिंकेज है ना, क्या? सारनाथ इज क्लोज बाय. राइट? सो बेसिकली बाय ऑब्जर्विंग and by knowing a few important things, you can talk about the ideas. So for example, diffused aims and objectives and lack of outcomes में हम ये कह सकते हैं rats. ये rats है आपके पास, पर what concrete action on terrorism? Right next door, अफगानिस्तान में terrorism चलता रहा. All right. So a lot of things that you can do on the basis of your own understanding rather than thinking कि ऐसा कोई special answer है जिसको पढ़ के मजा आ जाएगा. और अगर ऐसा नहीं लग रहा हो तो आप आंसर स्क्रिप्ट देख लिया करें. टॉपर्स की आंसर स्क्रिप्ट जहाँ भी अवेलेबल है, कुछ टॉपर्स अपना व्लॉग बनाते हैं उस पर डालते हैं, कुछ टॉपर्स की आंसर स्क्रिप्ट कहाँ पे है, विजन आईएएस की वेबसाइट पे है, तो आप देख लो और आंसर देने की कोशिश करो. ट्राई एंड राइट द आंसर टू दिस क्वेश्चन. ट्राई एंड राइट. And as I say, you complicate in your brain. The questions are not very complicated. What you are thinking is कि मुझे कुछ बहुत स्पेशल लिख देना है. यही होता है यूपीएससी में. अरे कॉन्क्रीट तो कुछ बताया ही नहीं. पहले जनरल लिख लो फिर कॉन्क्रीट लिखना. कुछ तो लिख लो. The problem is that you don't write anything, and then you have hypothetical doubts. Those who write, they start understanding. They start understanding कि कहाँ प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, क्या करना है. So combination of general statements followed by examples and interspersing your answer with some concrete terms. Shanghai spirit, rats, इनका इस्तेमाल ये होता है, राइट? कि rats दिखना चाहिए, हाईलाइट कर दो, ऑल राइट. और शंघाई स्पिरिट दिखना चाहिए, हाईलाइट कर दो. अफगानिस्तान दिखना चाहिए, हाईलाइट कर दो. उसके बाद चाइना पाकिस्तान दिखना चाहिए, हाईलाइट कर दो. ये कॉन्क्रीट हो गया इसके अंदर, राइट? और जैसे अब कुछ समझ में नहीं आया तो फॉर एग्जाम्पल कह दो कि there are no concrete economic arrangements like any free trade agreement between SCO countries. ये ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको ये लिख लेना है, ये सोचने वाली बात है कि जब हम कह रहे हैं कि diffuse focus and lack of outcomes, तो हम ये बिम्स्टेक में भी कह सकते हैं that BIMSTEC had 14 areas of cooperation, 14 sectors of cooperation. याद है आपको? BIMSTEC पढ़ा है हमने. All right, UPSC also has so 14 areas. Now BIMSTEC has 8 areas of focus. So earlier it has diffused focus, and that's why lack of outcome. मतलब क्या क्या हम BIMSTEC के बारे में कह सकते हैं कि BIMSTEC has no major agreement, right? अब लोग कहेंगे ये SCO की बात कर रहे थे, BIMSTEC पे कहाँ से आ गए? मैं आपको सिंपल बता रहा हूँ कि there are certain things which are very very common. Once you learn it, you can apply it in n number of circumstances. So some points are general, some points have to be specific. Do you agree? Okay. If you don't agree, then also fine. Then give me some suggestion. Please take a break. A lot of people are sleeping. So there are some interesting questions by online students also. Others ask, why Modi ji visited Samarkand in SCO 2022 as was meeting of head of state, not head of government? So head of government can act as a representative of head of state. हो सकता है ना? All right. For example, when India hosted the head of government's meeting, it was presided by Vice President Venkaiah Naidu. All right. So there is nothing technical there. Heads of state can have their representatives in the form of heads of government, right? And Prime Minister is an active role as compared to President. Is rats curb the state-sponsored terrorism? No. I have already answered this question. चलिए अब आगे चलते हैं. I will show you some figures and maps, and then we will go to European Union. After this we go to European Union. If you have any questions, feel free to send them across. या अखबार में कुछ पढ़ा आपने? Just give me a second. So, one example of the question that UPSC asked in 2018 is this. Central Asia से हम ये देख चुके हैं. All right. Which of the following have shrunk immensely, dried up in the recent past due to human activities? No brainer A, Aral Sea. All right. इसमें तो कोई मुश्किल है नहीं. This is the Lapis Lazuli corridor. All right. So it's part of what was happening in this region. Various initiatives which wanted to connect, stabilize Afghanistan. So Lapis Lazuli is a precious gem which used to be mined in Afghanistan and used to sold in European markets. So it is based on that idea that Afghanistan should be connected with rest of the markets. So Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey. So that is the route, but India is not part of it. That is something that you will remember. It's इसका इस्तेमाल क्या है? लैपिस लाजुली कॉरिडोर याद रखना है आपको in the context of Central Asia. All right, one example, and this is the Tapi pipeline. All right, so this is Turkmenistan, Galkanish gas field, and then Afghanistan, Pakistan, and in India the terminus is supposed to be in Fazilka. All right, so connects Central Asia with South Asia. All right, and then this is the question that UPSC had asked from Central Asia. A number of outside powers have entrenched themselves in Central Asia, which is a zone of interest to India. ये statement समझने में कोई दिक्कत? After what we have discussed in the class, ये statement का मतलब समझ में आ जाएगा ना आपको? UPSC only is telling you that why this region is important and this region is important. So ये starting point होता है. But क्या है? Discuss the implications in this context of India joining the Ashgabat agreement. Right? We had talked about 4 simple points. So one part always is what is Ashgabat agreement, when did it start, who are the parts of it, and then the other part is always India. So now let's look at the thing that we have been talking about, the INSTC. Right? So this is the INSTC. So INSTC simply proposes to connect India through a shorter route with Russia. All right? So this is basically on the map. If we plot INSTC, this is how it will look like. Right? So Bandar Abbas is a port in Iran. दूसरा पोर्ट कौन सा है? चाबहार. मतलब बहुत सारे पोर्ट्स हैं, but Bandar Abbas, it is in the Persian Gulf region. Chabahar is in the Sea of Oman, all right, on the coast of. So this is Azerbaijan is in the Caspian basin. This is Astrakhan. Astrakhan is a riverine port on Volga, all right. I hope you will remember that we said Volga empties into the Caspian Sea and Moscow and then St. Petersburg, northern city in Russia. And then if you see the traditional route, अभी कैसे जाते हैं? From the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea to Suez Canal to the Mediterranean to the North Sea, crossing the Channel and then Baltic Sea and then Russia. So the older route is longer, so it increases the time taken for trade and thereby the cost of trade. So that's one reason why India-Russia trade could not flourish, the distance. So that's why the INSTC simply proposes an alternative alignment of connectivity, an alternative route passing from Indian Ocean to Iran through Caspian Sea to Russia, and prospectively, meaning in the future, it may also be a shorter connect to European market. All right. So then this is based on an agreement between India and Iran and Russia. These are the primary participants. But over the years, other countries have also taken interest in this particular project, right? And we know that conferences on the operationalization of INSTC have taken place. Dry runs, meaning trial runs on this route have taken place. The only thing is the formal operationalization of the INSTC which remains, right? So that's INSTC. When जब हम INSTC करते रहते हैं, तो this is the route, the shorter route that we are now planning, right? So if you see the details of the routes then, and I'll just send you this handout itself. So you'll remember 2000-2001, the agreement signed between Iran, Russia and India. 7,200 kilometers long pipeline, which would have the capacity of 20 to 30 million tons. वो सब जरूरी नहीं है. So then what is the aim? What we have spoken. The aim is to connect Indian Ocean, Persian Gulf to Caspian Sea via Iran and then St. Petersburg in Russian Federation. And then prospectively what can happen? मतलब future में क्या हो सकता है? Future में from St. Petersburg to North Europe. North European market can also be accessed. So then INSCC expanded to include 11 new members. You don't need to remember this. You need to remember primary participants. And then dry runs have been conducted, meaning we have shown the feasibility of this route. So only operationalization is the remaining part. And thereby, what will happen? What are the benefits? So again, the simple things as we have talked about, उन्हीं को आप statement में लिखोगे. What are the benefits? That A, first of all, it cuts down costs and time taken for transfer of goods from India to Russia and prospectively Europe. So it cuts down time, it cuts down cost, thereby it may increase trade. That's the simple idea. It also provides alternative connectivity initiative to countries in the Eurasian region, meaning it is part of what is happening in Eurasia. There are multiple connectivity initiatives. So it is one of the alternatives there, right? And then alternative to China-dominated BRI, meaning if BRI is the only option, countries would be forced to choose BRI. But if there are other alternatives, then countries have more choices. It will be India's second corridor after the Chabahar port. No brainer, आपको पता है Chabahar है ही, right? So in INSTC the port that we use is Bandar Abbas. INSTC में कौन सा port use कर रहे हैं? Bandar Abbas and the Chabahar port. So that is again a commonsensical thing that we can think of linking, creating multiple tangents of INSTC, converging India's connectivity projects. ऐसा कहा है हमने, converging India's connectivity projects, right? So Chabahar is there. Chabahar is one corridor, and now INSTC is another corridor, right? So that's why. अब आ जाओ क्या करना चाहिए? In order to further make INSTC effective, it should be linked with. यही बात हमने की है और points में भी, linked with Chabahar port besides Iran's Bandar Abbas ports. It should be connected with various other connectivity projects with 5 Central Asian countries and Eurasian countries are talking about. So what did we say as the last suggestion in the context of Central Asia? That converge various projects. Projects in which India is involved, local projects or larger projects like INSTC with Chabahar. So Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, rail link. So some topics then start having common points. यूपीएससी क्वेश्चन पूछे और आपने अगर सेंट्रल एशिया देखा हुआ है, सेंट्रल एशिया पढ़ा हुआ है, सो यू कैन आंसर इन जनरल मोस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस कमिंग फ्रॉम दिस पर्टिकुलर रीजन. और अगर यूपीएससी कठिन क्वेश्चन पूछता तो यही होता है, यू अप्रॉक्सीमेट, ऑलराइट, यू ट्राई एंड गैदर वॉट एवर यू नो एंड देन यूज इट, राइट. सो फ्रॉम हियर नाउ वी गो टू द नेक्स्ट रीजन विच इज यूरोप. All right, so now we are talking about India's relations. So हम सेंट्रल एशिया से जा रहे हैं यूरोप. सेंट्रल एशिया से हम कहाँ गए? सेंट्रल एशिया से हम गए कॉकेशिया. रीजन दिमाग में है ना, मैप दिखाया था मैंने आपको. कॉकेशिया में कौन से देश हैं? कॉकेसस, जॉर्जिया, अजरबैजान, आर्मीनिया. उसके बाद क्या आएगा? टर्की, नॉट वेस्ट एशिया, टर्की. वेस्ट एशिया नीचे हो गया, टर्की, राइट. अब टर्की के बारे में सवाल ये है कि इज इट अ यूरोपियन कंट्री और इज इट एन एशियन कंट्री? सो इट इज अ ट्रांजिट कंट्री बिटवीन एशिया एंड यूरोप. सम पार्ट इन एशिया, बट टर्की ऑल्सो हैज एम्बिशंस ऑफ बीइंग पार्ट ऑफ यूरोप. तो टर्की क्रॉस किया, टर्की क्रॉस करके हम कहाँ पहुंच गए? यूरोपियन कॉन्टिनेंट. बहुत दूर नहीं है, आज शुरू करेंगे तो 6 महीने में पहुंच जाएंगे. ऑल राइट. सो देन व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट यूरोप वी अंडरस्टैंड दैट we have taken the Eurasian route. We are talking about now our relations with region which are geographically far away from India, right? So thereby what we understand is that in these kinds of geographies your general awareness about the region would be important. All right, so you don't need to worry about being an expert of Europe, but you should know where Europe is and what India's relations with Europe are. So if you see, Europe can be seen in terms of various regions. So one is what is called continental Europe, right? Then you have countries of Western Europe. Then you have countries of Eastern Europe. All right, then you have other regions like the Iberian Peninsula, and then you have regions like the Balkans. ये बहुत सारा इतने छोटे से कॉन्टिनेंट में इतने रीजन हो गए. When we say continental Europe, countries located on the mainland of Europe, right? For example, UK or Iceland, they are also European countries but not on the mainland, but they are part of Europe, right? Western Europe, this is the main industrial hub of Europe, which is countries of France, Germany, not वो तो Iberian Peninsula में आ गया, south, Germany, France, and then you have countries like Belgium, Luxembourg, Netherlands. These are the countries that you will find in Western Europe. Eastern Europe, generally associated with USSR or areas close to USSR, right? So you have beyond Poland, after Germany, you have Poland. Germany and Poland share a border, but also countries like Czechoslovakia, all right? Czech Republic, that is. So Czech Republic, Poland, and then you have countries like Ukraine, Romania, Hungary. These are countries of Eastern Europe, all right? So इन सब के बारे में आपने सुना होगा. Iberian Peninsula. Iberian Peninsula में कौन है? Spain and Portugal. Spain and Portugal, all right? And Balkans. Balkans, remember, is specific because of the earlier influence of Ottoman Empire, right? Countries to the north, east of Italy and Greece, right? Countries of the Balkan, Serbia, Montenegro, Bosnia, all right? Croatia, these would largely fall in the region of what is called the Balkans, right? So we understand that in Europe, some countries are more important, dominant as compared to other countries. For example, countries of Western Europe. For example, countries like Germany, France. Some other countries are of notes are countries like UK, United Kingdom, right? So they are important. But if you see, Europe is united under an organization called the European Union. So we generally talk about, when we talk about relations in Europe, we generally talk about relations with these countries. 27 countries of Europe are part of an organization called European Union, all right? So European Union then becomes our major focus. 27 countries, its headquarters is located in Brussels, its main offices, but it has various other offices. But Brussels generally is considered to be the headquarters of the European Union. Now, if you see the formation of the European Union, we find that it's distinctly a body which was created by the post-Second World War developments, 1957, 1979, 1992, 93. All right? So, we will remember that after the Second World War, the major effort was post-war reconstruction. So generally you will see that हम कहते हैं global order, है ना? ये global order क्या चीज़ है? Rules and institutions which govern the relations of countries. There are many countries in the world, but what links them? Certain rules which are common, certain institutions which are common. So today what are we talking about? We are talking about post-COVID world. Post-COVID world order. Meaning it was a large crisis which required focus on common issues. So after the Second World War, the focus was on post-war reconstruction. And in this period, the focus was on Europe. भाई एशिया और अफ्रीका तो कोई पूछ नहीं रहा है ना. For example, our more than 1 million soldiers fought on behalf of Britain in the Second World War. But we are not the focus. As world politics has developed in this way. So post-war reconstruction were in Europe. So you will find that here some issues become important. For example, you have the Marshall Plan. सुना होगा आपने? Or you have the Truman Doctrine. Meaning, on the one hand, US emerges as a partner, and on the other hand, USSR emerges as a threat for what are generally countries of Western Europe. All right. So this period is known for one, partition of Europe, not tangibly but intangibly. Partition of Europe in terms of spheres of influence. Spheres of influence of US, spheres of influence of USSR. And you see a process of post-war reconstruction, right? So what is it? Through the Marshall Plan, US provided assistance to European countries to build their infrastructure, all right, or to build their economies. So then how is this process getting underway? Through the efforts of European countries themselves. So you have the creation of European Coal and Steel Community, European Coal and Steel Community in 1951. European Coal and Steel Community is created. So this is first step towards creating integration in Europe. 1951, Treaty of Paris. This is how European Coal and Steel Community is created. Now the effort is to create commonality in certain common areas, cooperation and cooperation leading to further integration. So drawing from this success, 1957 treaties of Rome, treaties of Rome create other two communities. What is the community? Euratom, meaning European Atomic Community, European Atomic Community. And then what is created is European Economic Community, right? European Economic Community. So this is second stage of integration in Europe, where building on the success of European Coal and Steel Community, now European countries are emboldened to create two other communities, meaning common policies in areas of atomic energy, atomic technology, and European Economic Community. All right. So when the European Coal and Steel Community was started, it had Benelux countries, meaning Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, and it had France, West Germany, and Italy. These were the members of, meaning these are the countries which came together to participate in the project of integration of Europe. So who were the members of European Coal and Steel Community? Benelux countries, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, France, West Germany, and Italy. And then gradually the process moves on. In 1967, all these three communities merged in one single European community. All right, European community. One single community is created called the European Community in 1967 by the merger of these three communities: European Coal and Steel Community, Euratom, European Atomic Community, and European Economic Community. Now there is one European Community. So then in 1975 you have addition of other structures. For example, in 1979 you have the EU Parliament, European Parliament, which emerges prominently. And then in 1992-1993 you have the Treaty of Maastricht. All right, the Maastricht Treaty. So the Maastricht Treaty then proposes further integration of policies, economic policies, environmental policies, and even it has an ambition of moving towards a common foreign and defense policy among the European countries. Common foreign and defense policy among the European countries. Treaty of Maastricht. So Treaty of Maastricht generally is what we can say, the root of the modern day EU. The process is completed in 2019 through the Treaty of Lisbon. All right. So this is where you see the body called European Union now coming into existence. You can't say one date on which European Union came into existence, but it has come up through a process by the creation of certain communities, Treaty of Paris, Treaty of Rome, then by merger of these communities, then Treaty of Maastricht laid the foundation of further integration after the success, and Treaty of Lisbon 2009 is when we consider the process complete. So Treaty of Lisbon, for example, can be considered to be like the constitution of European Union. Treaty of Lisbon. So the process completed in 2009, right? Now if you see European Union, you find that the European Union then has a complex bureaucratic structure. So if you look at European Union, we know that 27 countries are its members. If you look at its population, it has 550 million people. If you look at its economy, the per capita income is more than 30,000 US dollars. All right. And if you look at European Union, it is world's largest trading bloc, world's largest trading bloc. All right. So for example, for your information, European Union is the largest exporter of goods and services in the world, not China. China is a large trading country, but which is world's largest exporter of goods and services? European Union. For more than 100 countries, European Union is world's largest export market. So that is what emerges when you join these countries. A market of the size of 550 million, a market where there is high disposable income available to the people. It is the largest trading bloc because it is for more than 100 countries the largest export market in the world. So if you see this achievement, it has come by creation of institutions. So how does European Union look like institutionally? So one at the top of it is the what is called the European Council. So European Council is a body of heads of states and governments, heads of states and governments, European Council. So this is the higher decision making body because here leaders represent their country. Presidents, prime ministers of countries represent their country, European Council. Then below this is what is called Council of the European Union. So in order to avoid confusion, you'll understand the European Council is like the president. All right. And below the president is what? In India, the Council of Ministers. So the Council of the European Union is a ministerial body. It's a ministerial body. Meaning then this is the body by which brings regularity to the work of European Union. Right? It meets more frequently as compared to the Council of or the European Council, right? And then 27 ministers represent their countries, and they then are divided in different groups, heading each policy area that they would be dealing with. Then you have at the bottom the most regular body of the European Union. Regular in the sense this is what conducts the day-to-day work of European Union, which is European Commission. European Commission is the bureaucracy of the European Union. It basically drafts legislation. It, along with the Council of the European Union, initiates legislation. It negotiates on the behalf of European Union. It administers the budget of the European Union. It, in that sense, is the body which implements the arrangements of the European Union. All right. So European Commission, a bureaucratic body which is there. So this is the structure of the European Union. Primarily you have the European Council, Council of the EU, European Commission. And then you have other bodies. For example, the European Court of Justice, and you have then the European Parliament. European Parliament. So meaning European Union has emerged as a complex set of arrangements. So for example, European Union has elections every 5 years, and the members are elected on the basis of proportional representation for each country. So members of European Union are not only, or the citizens of the members of European Union are not only electing their own parliament, they are also electing a European Parliament. They don't have their own courts of justice, but they also have a European Court of Justice, right? So thereby what we see is, we can say that European Union is a hybrid. European Union is a hybrid supranational organization. All right, meaning it's unique, it's sui generis in its nature. It's not like other organizations, for example, SAARC, BIMSTEC, and it's not like free trade agreements, for example, NAFTA or ASEAN free trade agreement. It's everything combined, right? So when we say hybrid, we say that it has the characteristics of both an international organization as well as a state. Meaning what? अब international organization तो है ही intergovernmental organization because governments are part of it. Hybrid characteristics of nation state, for example, it has its own flag. European Union has its own flag. European Union has its own currency. All right. So 19 countries of European Union use the euro as a currency, and European Union has its own external representation, meaning countries have their embassies and representation abroad. So European Union has its own external representation. All right. So that is the characteristic of a nation state, right? And then it acts as a common market for its members. It acts as a economic and monetary union, and it's supranational because it has very wide decision making powers. Decision making powers derived from its members, meaning its members themselves have provided European Union this power to take decisions on their behalf. Generally, countries take decisions on their own, of their own, but European Union decides agricultural policies, environmental policies, right, trade policies, which then the countries follow. So here is an organization which is taking decisions on the behalf of its members, which is then applicable to all its members. Supranational, meaning it hovers above the nation states. All right. So this has enabled it to achieve certain things, meaning unify Europe, build a Europe after the Second World War which is prosperous, rich, and build a Europe which is today called a normative power. All right. So European Union has been able to make Europe an economic power. European Union has been able to make Europe a normative power. Normative power मतलब, you see, European Union is not considered to be a military power. वो उसके power का base नहीं है. दो base है उसके power के, a large economy, prosperous economy, plus its normative power, which is any kind of negotiations internationally. European Union represents the voice of 27 European countries. So climate change में देख लो हम किन की बात करते हैं. US, European Union, अनदर डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज फिर उसके बाद एक ब्लॉक में आ जाएंगे. इफ यू टॉक अबाउट ह्यूमन राइट्स, यूरोपियन यूनियन वुड बी अ चैंपियन ऑफ ह्यूमन राइट्स, right? So normative power, meaning rule making power, meaning an influential voice in international negotiations. So European Union is known as a normative power. अभी Nobel Prize मिल रहा है. European Union has also been awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. किसको मिला इकोनॉमिक आज? मिल गया? So Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to the European Union for its contribution towards peace, right? So that is what European Union is. But there are certain criticisms of European Union also. For example, there are criticisms in the context of European Union having a democratic deficit or a complex bureaucratic structure. Right? So these two means what? Meaning, if European Union's bureaucracy has been able to formulate complex arrangements, agreements to make the process of integration successful, it is also accused of being non-representative, unaccountable, meaning people in different countries ask this question. है ना? ये common understanding है that if you are a country, your citizens have a right to send their representatives to a body like parliament, and the government then is coming from that parliament, from those representatives. So ultimately the citizens have a direct control over decision making. But if the decisions are primarily taken by, drafted by a bureaucratic machinery at Brussels, then there is a feeling that citizens don't have a control over the decisions that affect their lives. All right? So that is democratic deficit, that European Union's primary decisions are coming from a complex bureaucratic structure. Thereby, European citizens don't have a direct control over the decisions which affect their life. समझ में आ गई बात? आई? Democratic deficit generally हम कहते हैं जब decisions are being taken by bodies which are unaccountable. Governments are accountable to elected legislature. Elected representatives constitute the governments. But when you move towards this larger integration, what happens? By nature, decisions would become bureaucratic because आम आदमी और नेता ये negotiate नहीं कर सकता complex trade arrangements, all right, या complex treaties. By necessity, technocrats, bureaucrats are taking decisions. तो एक लेवल पे ये जरूरी भी है कि टेक्निकल फंक्शंस भी अलाउड टू बी परफॉर्म्ड बाय टेक्नोक्रेट्स, बट दूसरे लेवल पे दिस ऑल्सो जनरेट्स द फीलिंग that I don't have control over my life, I don't have control over the decisions which affect my life. So this is the democratic deficit of European Union. So its bureaucratic structure, democratic deficit lead to what is called, some people called Euroscepticism. Euroscepticism. Meaning, while there is a support to European Union, there is also considerable opposition, reservations about the European Union. And one example of that is countries quitting the European Union. For example, Brexit. Brexit is what? Brexit is a reference to Britain exiting from the European Union. UK's departure from European Union. All right? So, success भी है, limitations भी है, right? Many countries. In France, there is a considerable opinion that there should be no European Union. In many other countries, there is a considerable opinion that there should be no European Union. We are better off without the European Union. And this is seen in the form of a decision that the Britishers took, the UK took, which is leaving the European Union. We are no longer going to be a part of European Union. So, same चीज़ है, यही आर्ग्यूमेंट वहाँ पे भी दिया गया, यूके में भी दिया गया, क्या कि भाई यूरोपियन यूनियन के मेंबर हैं तो हमको फीस देनी पड़ती है, उनके फैसले मानने पड़ते हैं, उसमें से एक फैसला ये है कि भाई आप अपने लेबर्स के लिए भी मार्केट खोलो. तो यानी कि कल को यूके के अंदर पोलिश लोग, रोमानियन लोग वो बढ़ जाएंगे, वो हमारा एम्प्लॉयमेंट ले जाएंगे। तो ये साथ साथ चलता रहता है, साथ साथ चलता रहता है। ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट के बारे में भी देखोगे क्रिटिसिज्म इसी तरह से होते हैं, और किसी भी लार्जर एग्रीमेंट के बारे में इसी तरह से क्रिटिसिज्म होता है. So this is the reality. Now after understanding this preliminary, we need to understand simply India EU relations. All right. So India EU relations can be traced back to the 1960s. So we say generally that our relations are with European Union from the 1960s. But if you see in the current context, India European Union diplomatic and political engagement revolve around this summit, right? So India and European Union have a summit system which takes place regularly. India was identified as a strategic partner by European Union in the year 2004. So we can say that with European Union we have a strategic partnership. All right, we are strategic partners, 2004. And we can say then India and European Union are partners because of certain important factors. What are these factors? So the important factor is economic engagements. All right, economic engagements, which means what? If you see the last year, EU is India's third largest trading partner. But you see, in most of the years, European Union has been India's largest trading partner as a trading bloc in most of the years. But in any case, we can say European Union figures among the top three trading partners of India with around 88 billion euros of trade in 2021. India, on the other hand, India is the 10th largest trading partner. India is the 10th largest trading partner of European Union. All right. And then if you see, European Union is the second largest. European Union is the second largest export market for India, second largest export market for India after United States. This is our second largest export market, right? So economy clearly is a driver of this relationship, right? And then EU, if you look at it as a single block, EU is the largest source of foreign direct investments in India with around 24% of FDI coming from European Union. All right, 24% of FDI that historically has come to India, and we generally use the figures of 2000 from 2000 till currently. So we will see more than 24% of our FDI has come from European Union countries. And thereby what we also understand that future of this relationship is important for both of them economically. So India and European Union are negotiating what is called earlier was called a BTIA, which is broad-based trade and investment agreement. All right, BTIA negotiations. In other words, India EU free trade agreement negotiations, which are ongoing. So that is an important pillar of our engagement, economy, right? Be it trade, be it investments. European Union is attractive to India, is important for India. Now if you see, or if you want to, you can add another figure here, just to get a sense. More than 6,000 European companies, more than 6,000 European companies are present in India. More than 6,000 European companies are present in India. So economy clearly is a driver of this relation. Now, apart from economy, the other area which drives the relationship is, we can largely say that it is the presence of dialogue and cooperation on certain important in emerging areas. So while economy is a traditional area, emerging areas. So India, European Union have a India EU dialogue on water. We have India EU partnership in the area of clean energy. Clean energy. So areas like environment or areas like energy are an important part of cooperation between India and European Union. They are in a way defining the agenda of the future. And then in recent times, for example 2021, India and EU, India and European Union started a comprehensive, what they have referred as comprehensive connectivity partnership. Comprehensive connectivity partnership. India and European Union are working in these areas. So we can say economy, traditional area of cooperation, and then emerging areas, water or clean energy and environment, and now comprehensive connectivity cooperation. And then what we see is that gradually there is also an effort to deepen this strategic relation. So there is also an interest in cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. So European Union has declared its Indo-Pacific policy, and in that this may emerge as a large platform or large framework for India-European Union cooperation. So cooperation in the Indo-Pacific, right? So there are two things in this context that we will be doing. One, we will take up the example of the BTIA negotiations from the perspective of strategic significance of this relationship. And two, we will combine these factors, the emerging areas of relations, connectivity, clean energy, and the larger aspects of strategic ties. So ये दो चीजें हम देखेंगे when we talk about European Union. One is BTIA, another is a combination of Indo-Pacific cooperation and cooperation in areas which are emerging areas when we meet next. And then we will look at relations with UK very briefly. So we will look at in the context of Brexit. After the Brexit, another relationship in the European region that we will be looking at is relations with France. These two relations we will be covering apart from these two topics as example of India-European Union cooperation. And remember, after that we will simply move to the USA. So that's going to be the direction that we will take. All right, and gradually after that, after these relations are complete, we will have two topics left, which is diaspora and organization. Right? If you have any questions, more than welcome to ask them. Otherwise, we will stop here today. Lokesh says, what makes Ukraine abstain from resolution against China in UN despite it relies on the West? So remember, Lokesh, Ukraine has a fight with Russia and it would not like to unnecessarily antagonize China. All right, so that's one thing. So when you have one pressing problem, you don't try to take other problems. So Ukraine has abstained. All right, meaning it did not want to have any contestation with China. That's it. It does not want to increase its problem. Divya says yesterday in newspaper there was an India absent at a UN vote on against China human rights. Sir, doesn't have a good relation with China, still abstain from voting. Because if you see what is happening, it's very clear that India has a problem with China, but we want it to be as long term as possible. Either it resolves or it plays out in the long term. And you see, what we are saying is this: on the border there is progress. So what we are looking at, Divya, is a possibility of a period in which there would be tensions on issues like LSE, but India and China may return towards some form of cooperation. So by India not voting in favor of this resolution, what India has done is it has tried to minimize antagonism with China. Secondly, India does not vote in favor of country-specific resolutions, in favor or against country-specific resolutions on these kinds of issues. Why? Because tomorrow the same question would come in Human Rights Council, that there should be a debate on human rights situation in India. India doesn't want that. Alright? So it is part of what India seeks with China, some semblance of normalcy. So that means that we need not increase the number of issues, contestation that we have. And two, generally India does not vote in favor or against country-specific resolutions, resolutions which name call any particular country, because India does not want this to be a precedent. So that's why India abstained. All right. Chaliye, there are no more questions. You also don't have any questions. If you have, what is a normative power? A normative power is a power which is known for its contribution to rule making. Alright, so we said European Union is a normative power because it is an important voice in the context of areas like human rights or trade negotiations or technology negotiations or climate negotiations. You will find European Union to be an important influencer. So its rule making capability or its contribution to rule making, that's what makes a country normative power. Right. Chaliye, let's meet next and we will talk about these relations gradually. Africa bhi hoga, Amartya Africa bhi hoga. Latin America, I have told you initially itself, is only covered when it is in the current affairs. Alright, so if it is in current affairs, we'll cover it. Otherwise, it is in the written material.